listening to the 14th source for all geeky and nerdy news and discussion, which means that you're listening to a podcast.
For all intents and purposes.
I am D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And we are your two overeducated, codependent nerd hosts, bringing you the things that we like to talk about, but filtered through inquisitive and critical lenses in the episode for Friday, October 27th, 2023. And we're a busy bunch. We're here to hang out. Mm-hmm. We have anxiety that we're trying to deal with, and so we didn't want to go without an episode. And so we're here to share what we've been doing this week. And so just to cut right to the chase, we're going to be doing another Week in Geek episode this week, dear listeners, putting off the sex education discussion that we had promised. Which I have finished. I should say this. I finished the season. Apparently, I've had forgotten only one episode left. We'll talk about that. People are clamoring for it, Andrew. You should have seen the fan mail that came in going like, wow, I did not know you guys are watching sex education. I would love to hear a 2-hour episode about your thoughts of sex. No one sent that email. No
one sent that.
No. But right now, we're going to discuss our respective weeks in geek because we have been in a week, and guess what? We are still geeks. So, Andrew, if you don't mind starting, what was your week in geek like this week?
I started watching a show. It's a show that just started airing. It's in its second season. Mm-hmm. It's on what?
Wait, a show that just started airing, but it's in its second season?
It started airing its second season.
Oh, okay. There we go.
Don't be smart with me.
Don't be dumb with me.
Too late. It is actually, it's Quantum Leap. It's the new Quantum Leap, which is airing on NBC and Peacock, which is something you don't need. But, so Quantum Leap, it stars Raymond Lee as Dr. Ben Song, who is a scientist who leaps into the Quantum Leap accelerator and vanishes, finds himself trapped in the past, facing mirror images that are on his own, driven by an unknown force to change history for the better. His only guide on his journey is Addison, his fiance, and a hologram that only he can see and hear. Mm-hmm. I'm reading the prologue to the original Quantum Leap. So what's interesting about the show, I talked about it already. Season 1 was kind of a neat thing because it starts with this idea of we don't know why he jumps into this thing. We don't know what's going on, and he can't remember it. And so part of the show, the first season, was figuring out what's going on, figuring out what is, why did he do this? What was his goal? And then kind of ending the first season with, we know now. Like, we figured it out. He solved the problem. Mm-hmm. And it ends with like, all right, you're going to come home. And of course, the very last scene of the first season is him not returning home. Because I think at that point they knew they'd been renewed. So season 2 is now, hey, we kind of blew out the premise of the first season. What do we do now?
Surprise, we got a second season.
And I will actually say that while the second season it's actually it starts pretty gloomy because this is a spoiler. If you don't want to hear it, put your earmuffs on. Because the second season basically starts, the first episode is him doing, a Quantum Leap episode, except no one comes to help him. He has no hologram.
Oh, no.
Until the final scene of the episode, someone from the team shows up and is like, oh, you're still alive. It's been 3 years.
What? What?
We gave up on you. We thought you were dead, and then he leaps.
That actually, that gave me, shivers. That's like a horror movie kind of premise there. That's horrifying. Holy shit.
Well, so so the whole season is for him, it's just the next day. Mm-hmm. He's doing his bebopping through time, but for them at home, it's been 3 years. They even talk about in the second, third episode, they declared him dead. They had a funeral. Everyone kind of moved on. They shut down the project. It's just that this one person, Ian, the tech person, they kept basically logging in every couple weeks or whatever to look around to see can I find Ben. So that's the premise, and it's a weird way to take the show to give it kind of like some heft. That passes through episode to episode, right? But also still do the episodic, this episode's about saving this person, right? Because the show is always episodic, right? It's every day a new episode, a new person that needs help. But the first season did a good job of having a throughput of but we want to know what's going on. And now it's we want to see how does this develop as we realize, yikes. Like, all of his friends thought he was dead. And they're like, oh, no, you're fine. We buried you. I mean, the idea of you, it's like, oh, and you're back. But you're still trapped in time.
Right.
So actually, I want to say that, 3 or 4 episodes in, I'm enjoying it. It's a little stressful because I kind of wanted like more of an episodic show where everything's happy, scrappy, and we just go from boop to boop. And it's like, oh, but there's this heavy thing in the background. Because I said his hologram, the woman Addison who's been helping him, what they revealed in the first season is that they were going to be married shortly. Like they were fiancés. And then he did the time traveling, and it's like, and he kind of learns, oh my gosh, you're my fiance. Oh my gosh, I love you. I remember. And now he remembers everything. And it's like, oh, and she's like, oh, yeah, you've been dead. I have a new boyfriend. It's like, oh, big yikes. And so it's got kind of that, it's like a CW show. It's got to have some drama. But I like it because actually I think the Quantum Leap format of just picking a time in history, having very like the set pieces, the like here's it's in the 80s, here's the thing, and now of course they with the internet and everything they can research stuff. So one of the episodes is about Project Sign, which was the precursor to Project Grudge, which was the precursor to Project Blue Book, which is basically the looking for UFOs government project. Right. So it's about that, which is like, okay, that was fun. And I would say for those that know the original Quantum Leap, where it was, he could only leap to things within his own lifetime. They unhooked that in the first season of this show. They're like, actually, technically he can leap it anywhere. So the first season had like a Western, and this one now it's like, okay, 48, I think, 49. That's okay, even though this main character is 40 in 2023, right? Because I suspect they're like, yeah, we could do this show, but it'd be weird to be like, but only the 80s or later, So yeah, I've really, I'm enjoying watching it. I'm excited to see where they go. I do hope, because it's fun just to watch. It's mostly episodic with a little bit of serial narrative. I do hope that they keep doing it. It's a fun show. It's connected to the original series, right? I think I mentioned last time Ernie Hudson plays basically a character from an episode of the original series, which is like a fun connection that isn't too heavy. So they haven't brought Scott Bakula back because I think he said he doesn't want to. Great, they don't have to. I think they were actually going to bring Dean Stockwell, but then he died, so they didn't bring him back. And I'm glad they're not trying to bring him back through, virtual animatronics, because I've decided I don't like that.
No, yeah, there might be a strike over it, kind of, right now.
Yeah, right. It's just kind of like, oh, look, you just made virtual Christopher Reeve. I don't think I like that much. So yeah, I would say it's a fun show that is capturing a lot of the same themes. Although it's definitely the one thing I will say. I don't know if I said this before. I will say though, it's learned a lot. Right, the original series aired in the 90s. Right. TV's done a lot since then, and I think they know that, and they're more comfortable exploring different ideas and different ways to tell stories. I say that because like the first season has an episode that's kind of a Groundhog Day, which the original series would never have done, because they were very conventional. I like that they kind of are stretching the limits of what they can do compared to that original model. It's not just the same show. It's more, but similar.
Was the original show network TV or was it syndicated?
It was NBC.
Okay. Because I could see them very much leaning against doing like a Groundhog Day episode if it was a syndicated show from the get-go. But yeah, but even then, like the standard of what hour-long drama TV was definitely still not really too experimental in terms of what they could do with the medium. So yeah.
I mean, in the show, I think kind of experimented enough.
The show itself,
by doing,
it was an experiment. Right.
Every episode a mostly new cast. With only 2 recurring characters.
Right. Oh, wait. Are you talking about Supernatural?
Same idea.
Basically, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's. I think I've been enjoying it. The big joke here, and I think we were joking before we started recording that I originally bought the season on iTunes because I was like, I want to watch it, and I don't have cable, And I think they're like, oh, it's on Peacock. I'm like, I'm not going to get Peacock. Well, since that, I've since gotten Peacock because I love suffering. And so at least that's, it's like, it's a joke where you're like, oh, here's the third show I'm watching on Peacock, or whatever.
Well, enjoy all the quality entertainment on Peacock. What else are you watching on Peacock, Andrew?
Murder, She Wrote.
Okay.
Yeah, rewatching Murder, She Wrote.
Or is it the Quantum Leap? Is it the Quantum Leap app at this point?
Well, it's Murder,
my
She Wrote.
Paramount Plus app is just the Star Trek show
which holds a lot more weight since there's a lot more Star Trek. There are 12 seasons of Murder, She Wrote, so.
Indeed, fair. Yeah.
But yeah,
the greatest show about a serial killer ever made.
Yeah, Jessica Fletcher. So anyway, that's my Week in Geek. Dan, what about you?
I was actually kind of weighing my options here. Should I go negative? Should I go positive? Either way, I think I'm actually going to talk about a positive experience, mostly because it also fits the theme of the month that we have adhered to, as we always do every year, of Spookytober. Obviously, people are probably sick of us talking about spooky stuff every week this month, because that's all we do. We adhere to our principles and do nothing but horror and terror-filled topics. But no, actually, the joke being we don't, of course. But I actually did something terrorful in as much as I watched a movie.
Oh, that is terrifying.
A movie I'd put off for a while because I'm such a fan of the original film that this was based on. And of course, I'm talking about 2013's Evil Dead. I finally watched this, they call it a reimagining, not a remake, although it is about a group of people in their early 20s going to a cabin in the woods, and some idiot reads a book and causes all kinds of problems. My skepticism was built on the idea of like, I kind of didn't know where modern horror was, and I felt like they might have just been slapping a brand name on an aesthetic that was already existing, and basically I was worried about them like, oh, let's just do another sort of modern splatter movie, but let's put the Evil Dead name on it so that we get some more clout, instead of actually being like a real examination of what Evil Dead and that subsequent series was about. And I will say, like, the movie was very surprising in a positive way.
Oh, twist!
It's a good movie. Well, hold on, let's pause that. It is a good Evil Dead movie in that it is ridiculous, over the top, basically just a fake blood shower, and is remarkably faithful to, if you want to think of it as a reimagining of the original movie. It's not, they don't hit all the same beats, but in terms of like the shocking parts, the expectations, deadites, if you will, and locking someone in the basement, awkward scenes involving trees.
Oh boy.
That's all there to a surprising effect. I'm like, oh.
Whether you want it or not.
Right. To the point where we're like, oh, okay, they're doing that. They're doing that. All right. It's a very, and I guess a positive is just as awkward as ever. But that being said, I kind of approach it with a side eye, but got into the idea real quick of what they were doing with it. And I think had I not been in the right mood to watch this movie, I think there's a part of me, there's the nerd part of me that's like, make the Evil Dead of now, have it grow up with me, make it something that means something to me now as a 40-something-year-old, right? When that's not what you want, that's not what Evil Dead is. Evil Dead is the creation of people that are 20 years old with no budget being stupid in the woods. That they found a way to lean into that and update it so that it doesn't just feel like pastiche was really refreshing in its own way. Yes, the car is in the movie. Let's just say that. And I should say, Sam Raimi, Robert Tappert, and Bruce Campbell are all executive producers on this film and were intimately involved with its creation. And so it gets their stamp of approval in more ways than one. Stay tuned to after the credits, by the way. But I found it really kind of interesting and was updated for the modern audience in a way that I found respectful and interesting. Meaning this, the original movie was very much playing into the conventions of 70s and 80s horror, of like, we're just stupid teens that want to go drink and have sex, right? And like,
right.
as always happens in more horror movies, in that mode, bad things happen because they were indulging. The premise for this movie, I think, is much more interesting, and it plays much more into kind of how people act and behave nowadays, in that it's a group of teenagers, or not teenagers, but people in their early 20s, who go to this cabin that's in the family, right? Because they're all coming together because somebody's sister, who ends up being the main character, is basically deciding to quit substance abuse. And so all of her friends and her, brother and stuff like that go with her to this cabin so that she can detox safely. I'm like, that's actually kind of a really cool twist to the premise that lends a level of modernity and awareness that gives the craziness that happens afterwards a bit more gravitas than you would expect. But that being said, once the craziness starts, it gets crazy.
Then it gets crazy.
To the point where, like, there's not even really much else for me to talk about, because it's a cavalcade of gore in the most capital E, capital D Evil Dead mode that I could ever imagine. Lots of winks and nods that aren't egregious to the original series. At least like 2 or 3 people get their hands cut off in a similar way that Ash has his hand removed from in Evil Dead 2 specifically.
Right, a farewell to arms.
Indeed. Without being obviously humorous, which I think is what connects us more to the first Evil Dead film than Evil Dead 2. There is a comedic aspect to it, like the sort of just the grotesqueness of it is what's funny. And the first Evil Dead film is just gregarious. That's what makes it silly. Whereas I feel Evil Dead 2 really leans into being silly. And that's kind of what separates those two films. Right.
Like the idea is that the first movie was them trying to make a serious horror movie that maybe some people laugh at. And the second movie is them making almost like a parody of the first movie, but them making it like it's a self-parody.
Right.
Where they lean into the silly parts and then it becomes almost comedy.
Right. And so they definitely are making a horror movie in this case. And I think it works. It works as a horror movie. It works as an Evil Dead movie. Now, I did, not long after watching this remake, had the opportunity to start watching Evil Dead Rise. I couldn't get into it. I'm not going to blame the movie. I'm going to blame me and my headspace and whatever. I just was not vibing with it at all. But it's unlike Evil Dead 2 to Evil Dead 1. It's not... There's no returning characters as far as I saw. I think what turned me off, in addition to the weird headspace I was kind of in, there's been lots of stuff going on here at home. It just felt like, oh, they're just franchising it rather than like kind of doing what they did before. Because the main character, the survivor, if you will, of the new Evil Dead was pretty cool. I'm like, I could see them maybe
doing more movies.
Indeed, and building this character in a different direction from Ash,
right?
But still using her as a interesting sort of launch point. And they don't. And not saying that's what needs to happen. I think I just need to reset my expectations and sit down with this movie with a bit more distance between it and that first movie. And I think I'd appreciate it more. Basically, the premise of Evil Dead Rise is that it's Evil Dead in an apartment building, which is kind of interesting in its own way. I'll give it a chance when I'm ready for it. But the first one was a blast, a lot of fun, but gory and disgusting as all get out for sure. Which is
the first
part of what makes it, part of what makes it a glorious Evil Dead film. And I was really pleasantly surprised by it. Maybe in the outtakes of this episode, not that we plan outtakes, because that's not how we roll. In the outtakes, though, I'll spoil the post-credit sequence of this film because it's pretty great. Evil Dead, good times. Who knew? I guess everybody, actually.
Well, what's interesting about that is that given that movie came out in 2013, and after that they went and made the show on Starz.
Yeah, Ash versus Evil Dead, yeah.
Which was basically
not related.
A continuation of the original Army of Darkness.
Right. Yeah. Right.
Like it's an interesting thing. Like, hey, we made
the first season of that's super fun. It's super fun.
I watched, I think, the first 2 seasons. I liked it. Like it was. I mean, when you think about who's involved, I mean, I did watch a lot of Xena and Hercules growing up, although in retrospect, Kevin Sorbo's a shithead. But it's that kind of show, right? It was a silly fantasy action adventure, except with Bruce Campbell being exactly an older version of the character from his previous film.
I mean, an even dumber version of the character that was in those movies.
I mean, every movie they make him just a bit dumber, I think. I know. The charm of him in this role is him.
It's an inverse ratio. The more sequels they make, the dumber he gets. But he built a robot hand, for fuck's sake. That's pretty impressive.
That's true. That's true. But yeah, it's a weird franchise to think that they made this remake or this reimagining. They then they go back to an original, then they do a sequel that's unrelated to both. I guess franchises have done worse.
There's also that great video that went viral earlier this year, I think, it was Bruce Campbell and other people involved as producers and actors with Evil Dead Rise. And they were doing a Q&A after the showing, and some quote-unquote hardcore Evil Dead fans started causing shit at the viewing. The video is just Bruce Campbell telling him to go fuck off. And that's pretty great. I'll try to find that link and put it in the show notes to listeners, because it's not your father's Evil Dead, but if the 2013 film is any indication, it is definitely a worthy entry into the lineage. So Evil Dead, good times, good gore times.
Yeah.
Spookytober, here we are.
There you go. Our first and last spooky movie of the season.
So if you, dear listeners, have any thoughts about the topics we discussed this week, feel free to leave your thoughts as comments on the page for this episode at forallintents.net.
You can also post your comments or engage in conversations with other listeners on our Facebook page.
You can find us on other social media as well, specifically the places that Andrew and I frequent, which means you can find me on Instagram at @Bethel and you can find Andrew on Mastodon at ProfoundDark at Dice.camp.
While you're at our website at forallintents.net, you can also take a look at our YouTube page, which you can find by clicking the link in the corner that says YouTube. Or you may be there already listening to the show because we simulcast the show on YouTube. If you do listen to the show on YouTube, feel free to comment there. You can also like and subscribe, or as the kids like to say, ring that bell.
We use 2 tracks of music for our show. One is called Disco Medusi, the other is called District 4, both written and performed by Kevin MacLeod, the Clan MacLeod, immortal swordsman, graph paper enthusiast, and musician extraordinaire.
You can find his music at incompetech.filmmusic.io, and that's all licensed under the Creative Commons 4.0 attribution license.
If you'd like to help us out, the best way to do so would be to subscribe to the show using whichever podcasting service you happen to use. What would help us out even more, though, would be to go to their storefront and leave some sort of review. Whether a text review or using their proprietary metric will spread the word to new potential listeners through the magic of algorithms. Well, around here, Andrew, we are dedicated to themes and ideas. Spookytober is over, and November is upon us. But we don't call it November around these parts, Andrew. No, we don't. Do you know what we call it?
Actually, I don't.
Whovember.
Whovember. Oh, Whovember.
Actually, as today, the day we're recording this, which is obviously on Friday, October 27th, 2023. No.
We're recording it while you're listening to it.
It's great. It's
live stream.
It's live with an asterisk at the end. But today, which will give away exactly when we record this episode, do you know what was announced? The names of the specials and the dates of the specials of the Doctor Who 60th anniversary stuff. I'm going to run through them real quick. On November 25th, Andrew, helmed by RTD, Russell T. Davis, led by David Tennant, and of course, co-starring Catherine Tate, we're going to be getting the Star Beast on November 25th. On December 2nd, we're going to get The Wild Blue Yonder. And on December 9th, we're going to be getting the Neil Patrick Harris co-starring story titled The Giggle. The Giggle.
Well, I think we don't know if he's only in that episode or if he appears in other episodes. But the important thing, I just want to say, when they said they're going to have 3 episodes that appear in November, at least that's what I thought they said. That's not what they meant. They meant the first one will be in November, which is fine.
Yeah. There's 2 things I'm kind of interested to see. is that November 25th episode, the Sea Beast. Like, based on that title, it doesn't really feel like the 60th anniversary, because like the Day of the Doctor, like that's a 50th anniversary story, right? Like, it just feels kind of like, oh, it's a Doctor Who story, which is fine, but we'll see. The other thing I'm kind of interested in, based on the marketing, we've seen a lot of featuring, not a lot of, but some significant featuring of Ncuti Gatwa basically being confused. Is that going to be threaded throughout these 3 stories? Is that just something that we're going to be seeing with the final one, the giggle? It'll be, or are they saving that for? I'm guessing what's going to be the New Year's episode, or the actually probably the Christmas episode. Yeah, I don't know. Well, you know what? RTD, call us if you want to get some attention on your show, Russell T. Just give us a call. We'll get some eyes on your little science fiction show for you.
Sure. Yeah,
we are tastemakers. That's what people call us that all the time, Andrew.
Uh-huh.
In that we have no taste. So until, dear listeners, you develop a sense of taste in terms of food and entertainment, I'm D. Bethel.
And I'm Andrew Asplund.
And for all intents and purposes,
that was a podcast.
Welcome to Soundhole Problems.
I'm your host, Andrew and Dan. The application that chaps my ass the most is GarageBand.
Chaps your soundhole. So the end of The Evil Dead, Andrew. Mm-hmm. You can take off your headphones if you want. But what I'm about to say is actually not surprising at all. You hear the original recording of someone reading from the Necronomicon, and then as the final credits roll, it fades to black. We get a rim-lit profile shot of a man's face that is clearly and obviously one Bruce Campbell. He lifts his head and simply says, "Groovy." That's the post-credit sequence. That's it. And from what I know, he does not appear in Evil Dead Rise at all. It's just a shout out to fans. But it was kind of cool to see.